Hey there everybody, this is Gary from Constricted and Addicted. Today we're going to talk about taming down your brand new reticulated python. It's a question that I get asked regularly, and today I figured I would do a video on what I do and what my practices are when I get a new reticulated python and I want to basically show it that it can trust me. So stick around, check this out. This is my 50% Slayer girl named Celia. She's 50% Slayer, 25% Super Dwarf reticulated python from Chris McVicker. And this girl right here is probably one of my favorite animals. To be completely transparent with her, she's been good since I got her, but not all reticulated pythons that we get as babies or even as subadults can be a wonderful experience when you first get them. Some of them can be a little bit nippy. Of course, they're smaller, they're scared. And as a first-time retic keeper, it could be a little bit of a jarring experience to be handling an animal that basically doesn't want to be handled. So what do? Especially if you're unboxing the animal and you're pulling it out of the bag and all of a sudden it's trying to strike at you or get away from you. In some cases, these animals will pee and poop all over you in their defense to try to get away. As a matter of fact, here, Celia has actually pooped and peed on me numerous times because I think that she just gets kind of stimulated from being handled, but she's never shown it in a threatening or a defensive manner. So, I keep actually a bucket right below me. So if she does go, it goes into the bucket and not on the floor. What I basically do is sometimes I have to wear a jacket. Sometimes I wear gloves, and what I'll do is I'll get the animal out. Now my goal when I get the animal out, whether it's in the quarantine bin or if it's gotten through quarantine and it's in the collection, and this does not happen overnight by any way, shape, or form. This is something that takes time, it takes patience, and it takes consistency. And right from the go, if I get a snake and it is defensive and scared, the first thing I really want to do is I want to work with it. I want to let it know that I'm not going to hurt it. So basically what I'll do is a defensive snake is going to try and get away from you. It's going to basically want to go through your hands, and it might even try to take a couple of strikes at you. It's just trying to protect itself. It doesn't know any better. But what I will do is basically just try to get the animal to work through my hands. Now, obviously, Celia is not going to do that. She's very, very used to being handled, so she's just going to do what she wants to do. But sometimes I wear a big jacket, like a Carhartt jacket, and I'll wear gloves, and I want the gloves to be able to allow myself to feel the snake going through and not be cumbersome or restrictive in any way. What I do is I just get the snake's attention on something else other than me. There's a couple different things. If you've got a snake that is striking at you, you can actually hold it above you and it will change its direction. It will take its focus off you and try to focus on something else. But what I try to do is get the animal to focus outward and try to go to that object, such as a chair or a wall. And retics by nature, they're pretty curious animals. So what I want to do is I want to get the animal to go, and I just want it to go through my hands. I probably should have picked a different snake, but I just want this animal to run through my hands and get used to going through my hands and let the animal know that it can trust me. So the closer, I should try a different animal. We are going to try a different animal because obviously Celia is way beyond fear of me, so she's not trying to get away. She's being extremely curious. So let me get another animal. We're going to try with Georgia. Georgia is another animal that is very, very used to being handled, and she probably is going to do the same thing that Celia was doing. But basically what I wanted to do was show the motion of the animal going through the hands. If I give her some attention, something to focus on, And basically what I want to do is just have her run through my hands. And she's not going to do it either. Obviously, these snakes are very, very docile, very, very trusting, and they know that when they're in my hands, they really have nothing to worry about. Let me try and get Scarface out. Scarface is a really good example for this, so we'll try this one more time. So we've got Scarface out. Scarface is a little more apt to show the motions of what I'm looking for, and he's a definite example of when you have an animal that, even when I get him out at first, he's not really one of my animals that's super confident with being handled. After about 4 or 5 minutes, he's fine. But this is what I'm talking about. When you've got an animal that has any sort of fear or defense to it, what I like to do is just have them run through my hands, and then you get those nice long tongue flicks. Let's see if I can get him to go towards the camera, because sometimes he'll do that. But you get those nice long tongue flicks that he's got going on. And I just like to get their attention going elsewhere. If you give them your hands to run through, typically what they'll do is they'll just keep going through it, because eventually they think they're going to get to it. And it calms them down. Usually when you have a flighty animal, you can have them run through your hands, and they'll go, and they'll keep going until eventually they'll get used to it. And when they get used to it, what they'll do is they'll start to slow down. And what I like to do this with my animals for about 15 minutes every day until they get used to this. And that's where you see, like the previous animals that I brought into the video, where they almost didn't want to do it because they just want to crawl on me. And now that, I've got Scarface out, he's pretty much the same way. Now he's just going to want to crawl on me. He's going to want to explore, be curious like a retic is. And this is the result that I get when I do this. And this is not something that happens overnight. This is something that happens over time. Some retics, it takes, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Some retics, it takes longer. Some retics, you're going to have to do it every time you get them out, because that's just kind of their nature. You take them out of their home, they're kind of like, hey, what's going on? They might be a little bit defensive coming out, but in the long run, you just handle them and you show them, hey, I'm not going to hurt you. And especially with Scarface, Scarface has a little bit of a sight impingement. Let's see if I can get him on the camera a little bit. You want to show off your face, buddy? You don't want to show off your face, do you? But he's got a bit of a sight impingement. So I think naturally he's a little bit more defensive than most of my other retics because he can't see as well. Let's see if I can get him to come for his camera. But I don't think he can see as well. So naturally when I get him out, he's a little bit more flightier than my other retics. So I have to have a little bit different of attention to what I do with him. So he's a prime example of letting him get out, letting him just go through my hands, focus his attention on something else, and just keep letting him go. And he just keeps that tongue flicked and long and nice. And eventually what happens is he gets super curious. Just his defenses go down and he becomes a joy to handle, just like all of my other reticulated pythons. And like I said, with Cora, it took like 3 to 4 weeks before I got to this point. A lot of my other reticulated pythons, right out of the go, right when I got them, they were wonderful to handle. I got my pure Coyote from Lucas Bagnero from Lab Exotics. That animal, every time I get it out, I don't even use a hook to get her out. She just comes right out. All of my other retics, pretty much I do use a hook. The best thing to do is to get a baby retic so that if you do get bit and you go through this process, while they're young. And that way you grow with the animal, and by the time they're the size of Emma, they're usually puppy dog tame. It's just like any other animal that you work with. You've got to give it time, you've got to give it attention. You have to be consistent with patience. And if you spend 15 minutes a day with your animal and you give it positive handling experiences, I almost guarantee that you'll end up with reticulated pythons that are just like this, that have no desire to be scared. They just want to be curious. They want to go to the very next thing. And I do understand that eventually, every once in a while, you will get a reticulated python that is not going to be puppy dog tame, no matter how much you work with it. That's not my experience. I hear it from other people. But my experience is that if you've got the time and if you're willing to work with these wonderful animals, you will be very rewarded in the long run. This is Scarface. I got Scarface from Chris McVicker at New Shed Serpents, and he really did me a big favor with this animal. The Pied gene has always been one of my favorites, and he has definitely been one of my biggest learning experiences as a reticulated python keeper. And he couldn't have come at a better time, because by the time I got him, I was already used to kind of working with newer reticulated pythons and what it took, and patience involved to take them from a very scared defensive animal to pretty much a thinking animal that just wants to move around, be curious, and really doesn't have a care in the world. So if you're into reticulated pythons, or you have a reticulated python that has any sort of, I just call it being scared. We're big humans and they're little animals. And obviously, they just want to fend for themselves. They don't want to get hurt. It's our job to teach them that we're not going to hurt them. So that's what I got. I hope you guys got something out of this video. This is probably one of the biggest, most common questions I get is how do you tame down your retics so that they're not bitey and they're not flighty and they're not pooping and they're not peeing on you? And my simple answer is you got to work with them. You've got to do what you can to show this animal that you're not going to hurt it. And my thing is that I want to show this animal that I can be its best friend. The other thing is that the enclosure is not its enrichment. Its enrichment is outside with me, crawling through me, and the handling that I give it. And I handle my animals almost every day. So I hope that helps. I appreciate you guys hanging in there and watching the videos, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks a lot, guys.